Godzilla is a monster of a series. Get it? Dating back to 1954, there have been 35 movies made as of this video, and that is an impressive feat. Not many things have lasted that long and still be culturally relevant to this day. But I'm not talking about all 35 movies. The American ones can get out here. Feel my opinion on those? Don't like them. This one's actually got good action scenes though. And I'm also not talking about the 3 animated ones. We're keeping it strictly live action here, and who knows, I might talk about them at a later time. So that just leaves 29 movies to watch and talk about. Just 29. Despite the sheer girth and size of the 46-hour runtime, I did enjoy the experience of going through this franchise. But I don't think I should have done it in the way I did. Back in the summer of 2020, I was between semesters in college, and with world events going on, I myself did not have much going on. With all this free time, I decided to put into action an idea I had for a couple of years at that point. I would marathon the Godzilla movies. By that, I watched anywhere from 1 to 3 Godzilla movies a day until I finished the 29 movies. I would not recommend this whatsoever. For one thing, don't watch all the Godzilla movies. I'll get to that point later, and if you do decide to watch a bunch of them, spread out the viewing time. I do think marathoning the series colored my view on many of the movies a bit more negatively, as there was some points of exhaustion with not only the movies themselves, but the act of watching movies as well. The Showa era of Godzilla is a mixed bag. The movies made in this time can range anywhere from a masterpiece to actually terrible, and not at all fun to watch, to mediocre, to absolute hilarity. I'd already seen the original Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again on my own, and had watched Mothra vs. Godzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla with my father, not the version with the prosthetic tits, years prior. When I did watch those, they were all on DVD, and except for the original Godzilla, the American versions of the films. This time around I watched it all in HD and the Japanese versions, so I was glad that I was able to get the intended experience. The original Godzilla is amazing, genuinely fantastic. Everything about this movie is rich in symbolism and metaphor, and it offers a meaningful message on the nature of nuclear weaponry and trying to recover after World War II. Godzilla has a somber tone and is actually kinda depressing. Nearly every person in this movie is miserable, scared, and desperate, with the reality of having to suffer Godzilla's effects, a parallel to nukes. And it's great. Godzilla Raids Again, its direct sequel, is paced like shit. It's slow and boring. King Kong vs. Godzilla is a fun watch, and the major reason to that is how goofy and jank it all is. I think Kong has been hitting the red goo a little too hard. But really though, how'd he get those electricity powers? Mothra vs. Godzilla is a good movie. Wasn't fond of Gador, the 3-headed monster. Everything about the princess was pointless and could have been written out and nothing would have changed. Invasion of Astro Monster is a better Gador movie and has one of my favorite solutions to a problem. The aliens' plot to colonize Earth was foiled by an electric rape whistle. Fucking what? That shit's hilarious! Ebirah Horror of the Deep is an alright watch. Son of Godzilla starts off pretty good and is interesting until the 30-minute mark when all hell breaks loose and this bastard shows up on screen. This movie sucks. I didn't really feel Destroy All Monsters that much. Everything involving the kaiju felt like background elements, and them destroying major cities goes understated. The destruction porn this movie has to offer is fun though. All Monsters Attack is actually the worst Godzilla movie. This was during a time when Toho thought, let's try marketing to kids, and it produced one of the least enjoyable experiences I've ever had watching a movie. This movie is about a child who fantasizes hanging out with kaiju and this bastard talks. Why? There's your mistake. You made the main character a bitch-made kid. And the kaiju never shows up out of this little fuck's dream sequences, and even in the dream sequences, it's entirely reused footage and filler. Even as a kids movie, this is insulting and disrespectful, as it is one big lie and is lazily made. Even Son of Godzilla respects his child audience more. Godzilla vs. Hedorah brings back the idea of Godzilla having a message in its movie, that being anti-pollution, which gives it a bit more substance than most of the other Showa movies. And I like Hedorah. I think Hedorah is a cool and threatening kaiju. The beginning third of Godzilla vs. Gigan is painfully mediocre, and the remaining two-thirds are much more enjoyable. Gigan is cool. Godzilla vs. Megalon is a movie I love. I first watched it through the Super Best Friends Let's Watch, and I couldn't stop laughing throughout it. This movie is schlock central and is hysterical. Absolutely give this one a watch if you're looking for a good time. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is an alright watch. Terror of Mechagodzilla ends off the Showa era with a tired plot of aliens invading. Many other Showa movies do the same thing, but this movie is saved by attempting a more serious tone. I mean, not as serious as the original Godzilla, but more serious than most. Showa era is probably my least favorite era of Godzilla, and the reason is because it's a mixed bag. Half of these movies I'd say aren't worth your time, while the other half is worth the watch. One thing I will give Showa over the later eras is that I find it very charming. These movies are filled with a lot of technical errors and cheap looking effects, with the most obvious being aware that the kaiju are just people in suits. But you also got mannequins, wires, you can see the top of the set, awful looking costumes, kaiju bukake, and these fun little animatics from Hedorah. During my watch, I love noticing and looking out for these flaws that added so much enjoyment to my viewing. These flaws added so much charm and humanity because you can tell they wanted to make a fun movie about giant monsters despite their limitations. Heisei is a strong era with a really strong start to it. The worst that this era has to offer is mediocrity, but that's not often, and most of these films are generally a fun watch. One of the big differences from this era to Showa is that each movie is a sequel to the last and even has a recurring character, Miki, who shows up for 6 of these movies, only absent in Return to Godzilla. I don't like Miki. It's not that I think she's a bad character per se, I don't like her position in the world and story. Miki here is a psychic. What does that mean? Whatever the fuck the movie wants, apparently. And that's what I don't like. She's shown to be able to communicate with Godzilla, talk to plants, she's got telekinesis, and can mind control Godzilla? We're never told what her psychic abilities can and can't do. There were no rules to it, so fuck it, who cares? It can do whatever it wants. I wouldn't hate it as much as I do, so long as it has consistency and rules to it, but it don't. Miki aside, Heisei starts off on Return to Godzilla. I feel the meaning of this movie's title is twofold. Not only is it a return to Godzilla after a 9-year hiatus, but also a return to form of Godzilla, as in the original. Return emulates the seriousness towards how Godzilla is treated and attempts to keep the movie relatively grounded in reality. And trust me, this movie is a breath of fresh air between political conflicts, threats of nuclear weaponry, the seriousness that Godzilla is taken with, and the tone of this movie compared to the 60s and 70s Godzilla movies. This movie is phenomenal and one I'd recommend watching. Godzilla vs. Biollante is a good watch, and everything having to do with Biollante's final form is super impressive with how they pulled it off. Godzilla vs. King Gador is the only truly mediocre movie in the era. The characters do nothing of consequence, and everything outside of the kaiju battle is a whole lot of nothing. Big skip. Next up to bat, Godzilla vs. Mothra. Not to be confused with Mothra vs. Godzilla. That's a different order, you see. Mothra's cool. This is a fine movie. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 is probably on par with vs. Mothra. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is a fun watch, even if the Miki and the coagulated blood bullet storylines don't go anywhere. Space Godzilla is cool. Mogera isn't. This shit looks lame. Godzilla vs. Destoroyah is a great ending to the era and is filled with sick designs. Burning Godzilla? That's rad. Destoroyah? That's rad. I also like how it's a battle of kaiju born of horrific man-made weapons with Destoroyah born from the Oxygen Destroyer, so it feels like an on-par matchup. Heisei is a great era. It's exciting, very little of it drags, and most importantly, it's a fun time. Now after the trash fire that is Hollywood's first attempt at Godzilla, Japan said gotta reboot that shit and made Godzilla 2000 Millennium. Godzilla's redesign here looks fantastic with a striking silhouette, but further in you'll get introduced to some things that look off. Yeah, heavy CGI use in this era, but more on that later. This is a good movie, but if I were to compare it to the start of every other era starter, even the one we haven't gone to yet, this is the weakest of them all. I really like Megaguirus' design in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. Big SMT Beelzebub vibes here. This movie is fine. Godzilla, Mothra, and King Gador All Monsters Attack is a movie of weird decisions. Godzilla's pupilless eyes, known hero Gador being a guardian, and so much screen shake. This movie's not awful, but I also have no interest in rewatching it again, so take that for what it's worth. Paragon Best Girl. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Part 1 of the Kiryu Saga, is the second best of this era. The characters go through arcs and are interesting, which isn't the most common thing in this series. The first kaiju fight is great, and the second fight is even better with hype-ass spots and solid action. Even if it ends in a stalemate, the movie still has a satisfying ending. Part 2 of the Kiryu Saga, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, is a lacking sequel and not as good as Against. Where Against has characters with arcs and personality, SOS has generic characters that are just there because they need a story. Where Against has hype kaiju fights with really fun spots, SOS has missiles and Mothra drive-bys, which we've seen before. This is just a lacking sequel. I'd recommend watching just Against and moving on to the next film. The absolute best Millennium movie. Godzilla motherfucking Final Wars. Absolute must watch. This movie is some good schlock. I love almost everything about this movie. Action, over the top. One-liners,
sorry, I'm a vegetarian.
Terrible. Costumes, coated in edge. Zilla scene, the best. Monster X form of Ghidorah and Chainsaw Gigan, fucking rad. Captain Douglas Gordon.
There are two things you don't know about the Earth. One is me, and the other is Godzilla.
Love him. One of the best. Watch it. I watched this with a friend, and the entire time we couldn't stop laughing, and we loved every bit of this movie. The biggest issue with the Millennium era to me is the use of CGI for a lot of effects. At the time, CGI was new technology to achieve visuals that couldn't be done or would be difficult to do practically. So while I can respect the filmmakers of the era for adopting and utilizing this burgeoning technology, it aged like shit. Most of it just looks jank as hell, and it really takes me out of the movie, which isn't great if you want me to treat what I'm looking at seriously. While the Heisei era will continue to age beautifully, Millennium will forever remain attached to the jank. And that's unfortunate because this is an era with some fun movies, but the looks can get distracting and comical, for better or for worse.
Da 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 da.
So there's only one movie in the Reiwa era currently, and that movie would be Shin Godzilla. I fucking love Shin Godzilla and would say it's my favorite Godzilla movie. One of the core reasons why is because it feels like an extended episode of Evangelion without the existence of the mechs and depression, and that's because this movie is co-directed by Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi. Asuka even gets referenced, proving she's the only girl from Eva worth being mentioned. Both of their style works so well with the world of Godzilla. The politics and the science talk go at a blistering rate, the panic and fear from the people feel real. And everything involving Godzilla is so fresh with his evolutions and the new tools to his arsenal. Go watch this movie. Watch it. It's easily a 10 out of 10. And that's all 29 Japanese-made live-action Godzilla movies. Disregarding the era that Shin Godzilla is in, because there's only one movie in it, I'd say the Heisei era was the best era. You had consistently good and entertaining movies throughout, with only vs. King Ghidorah being the only mediocre thing in the era. After that would be the Millennium era, which keeps it short and sweet with GMK and Tokyo SOS being mediocre at worst in this era. Then there's Showa, where only half of the era was actually decent to some truly amazing movies. But then the other half contains miserable lows with All Monsters Attack, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again, etc. If you want to watch some Godzilla movies for your own, the 5 I'd recommend most, in no particular order, would be the original Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, Final Wars, Megalon, and Return of Godzilla. Honorable mentions to Destroyer against Mechagodzilla and Mothra vs. Godzilla for also being good movies. Just soul marathon every single one of these movies and only watch the ones you're interested in.